Well, good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's messmate. Time for another show. It's the New Year's edition right here. Coming to you next in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Let's roll that open.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
There you go. Welcome to the show. And he's going to be joining us from the West. My name's Dan Vaughn, my broadcast partner in crime. Good morning to you, sir. Paul Morgan. How you doing, mate?
Well, last time in 2020, DV, it's like the skies look a little ominous. They've been beautiful and blue for the last few days, but as we get out of this, year, it's looking a little dicey over here. But boy, there'll be some happy folks when the bell rings at 12 o'clock, I imagine.
Yes, it will be, no doubt about it. A little cold and rainy in North America. Most of the, really from the middle of the country, really from the Rockies going east, it's some dicey weather at best. So all good, but the good news is, well, first off, we know there'll be baseball tonight. We're going to get to that in a moment. We have a lot to discuss, but then again, not a lot to discuss because it's kind of the same thing. And unfortunately, and this is what 2020's brought us in our show, and what we do here on Baseball's Best Mate is talk about the Australian Baseball League. Unfortunately, this COVID 2020 thing hangs over our heads, and that's what we're going to really be discussing. We'll take your questions and comments on that. What's going to happen going forward? Well, we know what's going to happen this weekend, but what happens after that? Where do we go? What's happened so far? Unfortunately, we would usually be 3 weeks into the season talking about, boy, that team looks great, and boy, what's going on here? And here's a surprise, but right now, we've only got we've got an Aces club at 2-2 in the standings. The only team that's 3 teams that play games, and then 2 others haven't. Bit of a mess.
Yeah.
Or 3 others haven't. So anyway, quickly, where do we stand? We're going to go for that. Big news in the States as well. We got some news, a little collaborative efforts between the ABL. We'll also talk a bit about the Heat and Aces. Unfortunately, I think most of this show is going to go toward what we do know, what we don't know. First off, what do you know? What can you tell fans up to the date? What we do know, we do have a little bit, but what do you know at the moment?
Yeah, I think the biggest, well, obviously the spanner that it all started, as we all know, last week with the Cavalry not coming to town, which was a sort of own fiasco in itself. I mean, pulling the curtains back, there was an opportunity for the Cavs to sort of send their uniforms over, and I get it why they sort of didn't do it, to have a bit of a ring inside, represent the Cavs. But from there, you've got issues obviously in Sydney with the COVID outbreak there. Teams can't get into Sydney. Sydney can't get into some states without mandatory quarantine as well. So the Blue Sox season, really is the biggest question mark by a country mile. Into that, the Canberra Cavalry, also question marks on them big time. I do think in this revised schedule, from what I'm hearing, you'll see a lot of probably Canberra, Sydney play against each other for a little while until they can sort of settle themselves out. What I'm hearing is probably most teams then go into the remaining 4 teams, Melbourne, Adelaide, Brisbane, Perth. And the conclusion of this series with the Heat, I'm led to believe that there will be a hub in Brisbane after that for how long, and then whether that hub becomes a bit of a travelling circus around the country, so it goes into Brisbane, into Melbourne, Adelaide, and eventually in Perth. That's a question mark. There is a slight question mark on WA at the moment, with Victoria having some community mystery transmission diseases for coronavirus come up. So very, very, very much could be a case of Western Australia closing their border to Victoria, which would be a real fiasco because the Heat are currently in Victoria, which would mean they'd probably have to scramble to get back to Perth, albeit play up at Lismore or play. I know Plan B at one point for them was to play in Lismore. Whether they play on the road for the rest of the year is a question mark. But Look, I think the biggest probably challenge and why I don't think you'll hear anything from the league for a couple of days is you really. I think this Victoria situation is one of the big things. But you've got the obviously you've got teams playing. You've got Perth and at Melbourne this weekend, which would be great. But yeah, I would, from what I'm hearing from there, a hub in Brisbane. But I don't know if you heard anything different, DV.
I'm going to give you what I know, what I just reached out and found out recently or last couple hours. I want to compare this kind of you're stepping into the batter's box, you're digging in there, and that first pitch comes at you about mid 90s, right around your head, and you duck out of the way. You dig back in again, you think, okay, I'm not going to get one more of those at the head, right? Well, you get one more. That's what we've been getting. A lot of that stuff inside. Then all of a sudden, you really dug in there again, and here comes that big lollipop curve, which now is Victoria, that situation. And you're out in your front foot, and you look ridiculous. And that's kind of what's happening. I'm not saying the league's looking ridiculous. I think we're all swinging in the air right now. We're all, in a baseball metaphor, we're all swatting at butterflies, okay? And you and I just said before we came on the air, we were talking about the over. You actually sent me the message overnight about the Victoria situation. That's looming large. That kind of, it's like the Sydney situation with New South Wales 2 weeks ago kind of bubbled for a couple of days, and all of a sudden, boom, here it was. That Victoria situation is one to watch as well, because that's the one. If that was to be a problem, I don't know how you're going to be able to get this whole thing to fly. That's my concern. I mean, that would be my concern. What we do know is the league had planned on making an announcement today. I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. Look for it later in the day. If not today, if there's nothing today, you won't see anything until over the weekend or probably Monday, really, after the Heat and Aces series. I think they'd let it go and let that series play out, which also buys you time to figure out what you're going to do with Victoria. It also buys the teams, which I understand, all the teams, all the ownerships, license holders, what do you want to call them, they all have in front of them, they've got a schedule. They got one to look at. It's a proposed schedule going forward post this weekend. Now, they all have to sign off on it and to make it all work. And I think they're going to try to buy as much time as possible. It's like we've talked about over and over again. This thing is fluid. You've got to really adjust on the fly. And again, the league is having to adjust one more time on the fly because they want to play baseball, want to get this season in. And a lot of folks have got a lot of things invested here, and that's the main thing. But I'm hearing, and what I'm understanding is that if you don't see something by midday Eastern time, which is a couple hour away, and if you go in the afternoon, 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I would imagine you're going to wind up seeing nothing until Monday after that series wraps up over the weekend there in Victoria. That's what I understand. And again, the other concern is the Victoria situation. But I do know all the teams have their fixtures in hand, and that's what we said. That is the official update right here. That is a Talking Baseball Australia exclusive. You won't hear that from anybody else. That is what's going on right now. Stewart says, and I haven't got the screen here, come Sunday we'll have a team with 8 games played and 2 teams with a combined no games. Stewart, you read my mind, my friend, because you are about as on top of things as anybody I know. I wrote down on my questions that I have, because there's plenty of questions, the unbalanced number of games. That is a real problem. And I can see that, partner. And I'm just going to start throwing the questions out now. More questions. That is a problem. I mean, what happens if, for example, we get to mid-January, and you've got one team has played 10 games and one team has played 6. And let's say you get to the end of the season, you've got one team playing 20 and one playing 12, but the 12 team's got a better winning percentage than the 20. How does that work? How do you justify that in the standings? And what do you do? Or you just not play postseason ball?
Well, there was that last about this time last week, DV. That was a real consideration on the table. There was no postseason baseball. It was very much English Premier League style. Whoever has the highest winning percentage, and I'm assuming biggest run differential at the end of the season, would be crowned the champion. So that was really on the table a week ago. Also, what was on the table a week ago was a rotating hub. It started in Brisbane, went from Brisbane to Adelaide to Melbourne to Perth, and the finals and grand final series played in Perth. I don't believe that's the case anymore. Was on the table about 7 days ago. But you're right. I mean, I think presumably Sydney's the one that's the biggest. Sydney's the biggest interesting one because it's I believe they can go into Canberra okay, but that's about it. So, I do know that Canberra and Sydney are probably likely to play an 8-game series while everyone else is playing each other up in Brisbane. There is talk as well. Perth leave Melbourne and go up to Canberra because you can obviously go up through to the ACT, not a problem. There is a talk there was a scenario that happens as well. Scenario that Melbourne might follow them as well to Canberra. So lots of different things to unpack, but you're right, DB. I mean, for me, I just feel like in the end, it might be a 2-week sprint, and all the teams into a hub somewhere, and the winner takes it all. That's what I kind of feel that it's how it's going to end up. But whether that happens or not, whether it can happen or not, is a big question. But seemingly, if you got the Blue Sox offered to Queensland today, they all had to quarantine for 14 days. Maybe you could play that tournament Jan 15 to Jan 30, and that I think is probably a scenario that could happen also.
Yeah, that series, by the way, this weekend, the Canberra Sydney thing, was postponed. As most of you folks saw, that was pretty much the breaking news earlier this week. Phil says too, in 45 minutes, South Australia officials will announce changes regarding the New South Wales border. I will let you know what arises live. So looking forward to hearing that. That'll be the tail end of the show, I'd imagine. But yes, GM, I feel for the players too, and that's my list of things. I feel for a lot of folks. This is a tough situation. When you see series postponed, and I've said this before, as a broadcaster, what we do, we call the games and comment on the games and do our thing. We don't really count the dollars and cents of it all. We don't really tear the tickets or sell the merch or sell the beer and the snacks. We don't do that. But having a lot of close friends of mine in the game do that, it's painful when you see that word postponed, whether it be for rain, pandemic, whatever, because you got to remember, each team has a P&L statement they put together way back March, April, May, whenever they put it together. And in Sydney's case, for example, it had, the Manny line there, hopefully to recoup some revenue and get some momentum going. And other items too. You've got people to pay, you've got vendors to pay, all these things, and you can't pay them unless you don't play games. That's the key. And so I feel for those folks. I feel for the players, of course, but I feel for the Adam Dobbs of the world. Any club is affected. Even our friends in Perth. I feel for Rory and those folks who 2 weeks ago saw their 4-game series shut down to 2 against the Future Squad, which still was a great story. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I feel for so many people here. I mean, there's a lot of folks I have a lot of empathy for, but from a business standpoint, and that leads to my next thing. My biggest concern, and this is my concern going back. You remember the time you asked me about a month and a half ago what my biggest concern was? What did I say? The financial ramifications of all this. And it is dang near impossible for Sydney, Brisbane, whoever, to run a business and plan promotions and try to excite a fan base when you don't know what the hell is going on. And that's not the league's fault. That's the pandemic's fault. That's what the pandemic's done for all of us. And it's unfortunate these days having crowds and people at an event is just not possible on a consistent basis. You know as well as I do how businesses around the world have hurt. I drove by the movie theater the other day that on a Christmas day would have been packed with a car out in front. So it's a trickle-down effect. So my concern is when I see series postponed, there's no money coming in for the coffers to pay the vendors. And that's what I'm worried about, partner.
100%, and I know that's exactly why from that futures point of view with the Heat and Canberra series, it was a huge. That series not going ahead was a huge commercial disaster because you had your premium tickets sold, you had your partners sold, you had people had plans and whatnot. So, fortunately to get that series off was something that was such a great collaborative effort to get it sorted. But and to your point, DV, like all the owners are 100%, like they ain't, no one's making money. I mean, they're all losing money at the moment. Yeah. They're all topping up the fund and they're all digging into their pockets and it's fortunate that there are majority of teams are owned by guys with very deep pockets, but at some point, your pockets, no matter how deep they are, you don't
Yeah,
want to keep going back into them.
yeah, but that's not the nature of the business. I mean, you know that breaking even is probably your ultimate goal because you're not going to make a lot of money in this minor league model in general, but you want to break even and pay your bills.
Yeah,
And deep pockets or not, that's the biggest concern.
yeah,
And I'm with you, man. I mean, it's a tough sell. And you saw Wendy's comments there, that with no clear direction and with the dark, it's tough. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you and I are not, businessmen per se, but I mean, I know very good business people who are struggling, and you just don't toss good money after and chase it over and over again. It's like sitting at,
mm,
I love to use my blackjack and poker analogies for Vegas, but
yeah,
it's like chasing at a blackjack table. You put a couple $100 down, you're down $200, you start chasing. You want to get that $200 back, and suddenly you lose $400. Suddenly you're at the ATM again, you've got 200 more out. Suddenly you're down $800, $600. Your
yeah.
trip's ruined, and that's my concern. But
But and secondly, is the opportunity as well. I mean,
yes,
like there's a huge, like in Perth. I think what Perth has almost gone a little bit polar opposite to the vast majority of the world, where you've got so many businesses absolutely flying at the moment. You've got no competition from a sport perspective at the moment. Like there's no Perth Scorchers in the Big Bash in the Perth. They're playing in hubs in the Canberra, I think. You got no Test match cricket here. You got no NBL basketball. You got nothing. You got no live sport. You got the Perth Heat with this plum baseball, with this plum opportunity to take it all. In a market that you can have a PAX that you can sell the stadium out. Doesn't matter how many people you've got there. You have 3,000 in the crowd, 4,000 in the crowd, and it's unfortunate that they just can't. With the border restrictions in Western Australia, like the Heat are in a spot that they can't take advantage of what should and could be a really good time for baseball in this state, and we see that coming up in the next couple of weeks. There's a great in the absence of the under 16s and under 18s national tournament. The Baseball WA are doing a Tampa Bay Rays baseball showcase. There's a lot of good things going on, which unfortunately never get to the good stuff, DV, because there's just all this stuff that's such a mess that we can't kind of get to. Hey, there's some pretty good things happening if we
yeah,
all have patience of it, and
and,
that's the tough part.
and that's the thing I think that probably upsets. And I wrote this down on my things here. You know, what upsets me the most, and first off, big tip of the cap to the folks of the Heat and the Brisbane folks. I mean, what they did to pull off that series 2 weeks ago, flying, I mean, basically changing a flight manifest in about 10 hours time, flying a bunch of, oh, by the way, you're way out here. The story was what I understand is that whoever was bringing the team over was basically tapping the shoulder saying, hey, mate, you're going. Pack your bags.
Yeah.
You're going west. You're like, what? You go to the office and have a cup of coffee. And you're kicking back, going, what? I'm doing what? We're doing. And so they put that together. It was a real celebration. I love the photo, and I should have probably put it up, but I love the one that was up online of the Heat fans thanking the Bandits futures players. I mean, that I think I think it's actually on our Facebook page. You can see it down a few spots, but just a really great gesture. And it's like you just said, opportunity knocked. And you could have just raised the white flag and said, well, we're going to have an inter-squad game. But these teams are all doing that. I saw Sydney doing the Yankees-Red Sox deal. Canberra's doing a special showcase as well. There's a lot of things going on and trying to make the most of the opportunity, something that Camville's talked about before. You and I have talked about opportunity knocking, and the Heat have that opportunity, and they took advantage of it with the help of Brisbane. Again, Mark and company out back east in Queensland, thank you for what you did, because baseball won. It didn't matter. It didn't matter 2 weeks ago, partner, who won those games. The fact was baseball won, and that's what we need. We need more of that in 2020. So I tip my cap there, but you're right. Opportunities there. I'm kind of dropping a couple of comments here, questions here as well. And by the way, you guys, questions and comments, we'll let it hear from y'all. Fire them off, because we're here on Baseball's Best Mate, Talking Baseball Australia Live here on a special New Year's Eve edition as we get ready for the Heat and Melbourne Aces a bit later on today, 4 o'clock in the West. It'll be 7 o'clock back in Victoria there in Altoona. My other questions here, besides how you sell tickets and promos, I looked at the numbers today. It's hard to really tell much because, again, Melbourne's played the 4 games, but they played a two-game series. They didn't really get their 4 games in. The Heat haven't played at all. It's hard to get traction here as a ball club. I mean, what do we really know anything now? I went back and watched some of that game last with the final game of the series in Canberra. What do we really know that we kind of knew that Melbourne probably hit the ball fairly well, but what do we know? Do we know anything more about them than we normally would? I don't think so. I mean, we kind of do, but
No,
no traction really for these clubs.
no, and it's interesting. Even even thinking about this series preview, and what would what would my preview be for the Heat? I mean, I watched them play 2 games against the Futures. For me, Unsworth looked really good. Like their pitching looked good, the Heat, but then like they were playing against the future batter. So how is a young guy from Brisbane compared to Delman Young? Et cetera, et cetera. Giffen Gope comes into the Melbourne Aces. What were the Heat? What were the Tampa Bay Ray guys like for the Heat? I mean, nobody really took a. There were guys that got a lot of hits, did a lot of disciplined stuff. There was. No one looks like they're going to hit the stuffing out of the ball, but like at the same time, the Ford Proctor looked really good, and these Abiel Ramirez looked really slick, for the Heat as well. There was a lot to kind of go, oh yeah, these guys could look quite good, but to your point, DV, there wasn't probably enough evidence, I guess, to go, boy, they are. This guy's going to be. I do think that there are a couple of those Rays prospects that are ahead of the curve, maybe ahead of the curve of a little bit of what we've seen in the past, and I'll be interested to see that. But I'm with you. I watched the Canberra Melbourne game, and we said it, we've said all along, and look, I even said it to a couple of the Heat brass the other day. I mean, really, the team that stands in front of anyone for the Shield are the reigning champions in the Melbourne Aces. I mean, they are the team, and we've spoken about it many times, that on paper are very difficult to beat. And but the paper hasn't really translated onto the field, so we're not sure where everything's at the moment.
Yeah, usually by now, we've played half a season. We talked about that earlier too. I mean, and you don't really know anything. We got New Year's Eve. I can remember years gone by being up at the terrace there at the ballpark in the West, having a New Year's Eve party, and knowing that the Heat were well positioned for a playoff run again, but they hadn't done their first regular season pitch yet. Couple of the things I wrote down here, because I wrote questions when I sent the rundown to you. First off, this whole thing, Auckland looks pretty smart, don't they?
Yeah, they're like geniuses.
I
Look, I think and the Auckland deal. I mean, they got cooked in a press release. Let's not be. But you would have to imagine they'd be sitting back in Auckland just not. I mean, obviously they'd be up. They're baseball people. They're great people, so they'd want the league to be going ahead.
Yes,
but I mean, they would be sitting back now going, well, this was our fear. And rightfully, wrongfully, maybe they stayed in the fight too long before they pulled the pin. But they do look like geniuses, DV, and they look like they've sort of been the big winner, I suppose, in the season, because their fears have come true. I mean, let's be honest. I don't think this thing could be much like it could be worse, but I mean, when you go worst case scenarios, when you would have drawn up at the start of the season, okay, what are the worst case scenarios for the ABL in 2020? You'd be ticking a lot of them off. I mean, we're not going to talk. Yeah. I'm making an active decision to kind of not talk about the Manny Ramirez thing, but we know what's going on there. I think most people know what's going on there. But it's pointless for us to kind of go down there. But it's but everything that could have gone wrong has gone wrong so far. A lot of things that could have gone wrong have gone wrong.
Well, we'll table that for a moment. Again, your questions and comments and all that. Let's talk about what has gone right. And kind of law. And this is again. There's some really good things going on, and unfortunately, because of all this other stuff, we don't get a chance to really talk in depth about it, get guests on about it, because we spent the whole show doing it. But a really good announcement was made, would have been yesterday, 4:00 Central Time in the States, 6 a.m. in the West yesterday on a Tuesday in North America over here. But the Australian Baseball League and the American Association And now I feel like I've been vindicated, my friend, because how many times have I say it on this show, on our broadcast, over the years, how many times has good old Dan said, well, in the American Association, or at Kansas City, or the American, I always throw out that American Association, and vice versa on the American Association broadcast, those T-Bones fans and previously the Railcat fans that go, why is Dan talking Australia again? He's talking about Australia. Always about Australian baseball. What is he talking? Get back to the T-Bones. Come on, So finally, I feel like I'm vindicated, but a great partnership, something positive despite all the negative. Kind of a cool deal, huh?
A very cool deal. And before we kind of delve into it, I think, like from my perspective, look, for those who don't know, like, Dan Vaughan was, he orchestrated a lot of this as well. Like, was put people in contact and whatnot. For whatever reason, didn't get the credit he deserved. But I just wanted everyone to know on our side that, like a lot of this stuff is not going to happen without you, DV, and the work that you've done on this. And it's just, but, this is a very significant partnership. And we've spoken about it for how many years have we said it makes so much sense for an ABL team to be playing in the American Association. We've said that for, heck, we've come up with names for teams that we could do. We've come up with locations of teams we could do. Like, it makes so much sense. But, like, you even think now, if you're an aspiring young broadcaster or journalist or a front office person or whatever, and you now all of a sudden there'll be pathways for you to go and work. If you're Australian, there'll be pathways for you to potentially work at the T-Bones or the Railcats or up in the Winnipeg if you want to be that brave in life. And then, and also, like, if you are a young guy that, we have you can also, from a T-Bones perspective, could be the groundsman or something like that. Could be guys that are learning their craft. Could be front office staff there. They could be assistant general managers of the T-Bones who might come down to be GM, run a team or something down here for 6 months. But yeah, like, look, I'm so this partnership makes me so happy for so many reasons, but more so from a point of view that you're in the American Association and in the ABL, and it's been something that you've been so passionate about for such a long period of time. You've had the inside track on all this, and look, it's history may not sort of ever gloss over this part, but I'll always know, and I hope our fans always know that it was you, Dan, that was an enormous part of this partnership happening. And my hat's off to you, sir, because I'm just so pleased and proud that this has come about, and it's exciting. It's really exciting for what will happen.
Well, I appreciate it, my friend. It means a lot to me. It is something that I've championed for a long time. The Australian Baseball League gave me a restart in 2012, and I was able to carry that in the American Association 2013. And all these years later, seeing it all come to fruition means a lot to me. I'm very excited for all the different things. There are a lot of things. I'm going to do a little drill with you, okay? Just so you guys can understand how important this is. Bear with me. I'm going to pull up the 2019 Kansas City T-Bones roster, okay? This is just the T-Bones roster from 19. I'm going to count you how many Australian connections, meaning guys who played in Australia were. Let's see here. We've got one. Let's see here. Mikey Reynolds, there's one. Let's go down here to Jackson Lowry, played in Canberra. Let's see here. Looking down the list here, let me go to again. That's just one roster and one roster at one game. Okay, I mean one roster for one season. That's just the T-Bones 2019. Now, every team's got at least a minimum of 2 connections, and I can go through and I did this earlier. I was going through roster after roster. That's just 2 names off the 19 T-Bones, but I can go back and go name after name after name. And how many times I said in the association, this guy was in the association. There's a lot of those guys out there, and they come over and play, and again, it just makes sense because how many times I've talked American Association and Australian Baseball League at the very same time. It just makes sense. It's such a marriage made in heaven because they do play opposite times of the year. And there was a time when the MILB or MLB was kind of influencing the Australian Baseball League, and it still is. But now with no ownership of MLB of the Australian Baseball League, it lets the ABL move around and have some associations with the Nippon, with the Korean League, with Taiwan, all this. And this is just one of those same progressions here. And you mentioned, trading of front office people. What does this game need? It's good Australian players. We need good development of front office folks who know the business of baseball, who understand the minor league model and the growing model and how to promote, how to sell tickets, how to do the right thing merch-wise, all the things that go into it. We need more young executives from Australia, and what better way to grab that experience and having some exchange program. The exchange program is going to be phenomenal. Players back and forth,
Absolutely.
streaming ideas. I'm going to tell you right now, there is an answer for the streaming issue that the ABL has. The American Association has it. What they're doing in the association is what the ABL would like to do. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And then you throw in the possibility of down the road, future player trades, or not player trades, but player opportunities for Australians. Because right now, remember, Major League Baseball's cut their draft. Fewer international free agents, fewer chances to be signed by a major league club and be seen and play year-round baseball for young Australian players, which is going to help the national team. There's a lot of connecting dots here. This is just a great situation. I couldn't be more excited. So I kind of give you guys some background there. Anyway, but that's my tangent on the whole thing. But I
think what's also really exciting by it is, obviously the American Association, independent owners of all clubs as well. Like it's, guys who've got good wealth and, there's also financial elements as well of guys who, from an Australian point of view, might see this alignment as an opportunity for them to, there's so many things that you dig under the surface. And I think it's great that starting today, maybe all the games are going to be on the American Association TV's side as well, which is great on the ABL and vice versa. I'm really excited that next year you're the eyes and ears. Fingers crossed that the season goes ahead. Because boy, I was thinking about it earlier today. Imagine if we were around the clock 12 months ago, we're doing this show, and I said to you, "Hey, DV, by the way, you're not going to broadcast the T-Bones. That season's going to get shut down. MLB's going to be 60 games. We're going to be no fans, and we'll still have this mess going into January next year." I mean, you'd think it's just unreal. But
I know what I would do. I don't know what I do. Well, congratulations to Cam Vale and to Josh Ashab, the two men that head up both the association and the Australian Baseball League. It's a great situation. Matter of fact, I'll tell you how proud it was from me. I got an email from the Kansas City Ball Club early afternoon yesterday, around lunchtime, saying it was going to be announced at 4:00. And I was just like, this is really cool, because all my baseball family I work with in KC saw it, and they all know that that's something I'm very proud of and very excited about, and it was really cool to see. So really a real good feel good, and really it's been up and down time. But yes, very good stuff. Looking forward to bright things. As a matter of fact, Joshua Schaub reached out to me earlier today, and he said some very exciting things ahead. I know Cam's got some very exciting things to talk about. We got to get through this 2020, but once we get through this whole mess right now, good things heading down the road. Good to see Brian out there as well. And again, to promote the T-Bones and the association, along with the Australian Baseball League and the Heat and then the Aces and the Bandits and so on, is pretty cool. So even Winnipeg, I guess. So anyway. Okay, partner.
Canadian team left. I've got to have half a foot in the Winnipeg camp. So
there you go. Well, but Winnipeg, there's been several. I mean, again, Wes Darville comes to mind. A member of Team Canada's played in the ABL. Would have played this year, but that's a guy that I see all the time in the association, and it's good for him. You got to remember too, it works both ways. These guys are getting winter opportunities, and they're getting, and vice versa. But I think one of the biggest things too, and don't discount this part, and we'll move on. It's the little things. For example, I'll use "fun well done" for the T-Bones. It was the hashtag for years. The T-Bones are going through a major rebrand, which will be announced in the next couple of weeks. A very exciting rebrand. But there's been a lot of work and effort going into these rebrands, all these things these clubs do. St. Paul, who's moved on to AAA, but what they've done in St. Paul, entertaining fans and get the fans involved, those little things they've done are going to trickle down to the ABL, and only going to help our league in the winter become, as you and I have talked about, every game will be an event. You go to an American Association game, it is an event. We're going to make the ABL an event every time. So I close with that there. Let's just shift, partner, to the series this weekend. We know a little, but we don't know a lot. I guess it's kind of what maybe the theme of our show. We know a little, but don't know a lot. But Heat and Aces this weekend.
We should get rid of baseball's best mate and be we know a little, but not a lot to be our tagline for 2021 onwards.
Well, we do know that Dylan Unsworth will toe the rubber tonight. He'll throw the team. Will show up. We think there'll be 4 games to get in. I hope there's not a scenario like happened 2 weeks ago where the Aces are racing the border and the Heat are racing across the plane to get back across the border or something along those lines. But on paper, this is a dandy of a series because what the paper shows me, what the roster shows me is the Aces, the Randy Claxton Shield winners, the usual suspects, plus some new additions like Nagope. Then you got the Heat with we went back and looked last year, their league-leading pitching staff. Really, if you think about it, if they reseeded the teams properly, the Heat don't play the wild card game last year. They probably wind up playing the Aces for the finals anyway, but another story anyway. But you got the band back together, plus, some new additions. And he goes, there's a lot on paper to like about this one. This one should be, as they say, a cracker.
100%. And you look at, and what I'm looking at from a roster point of view is like, take a look at from what the roster's been announced. You look at the Aces infielders of Jared Cruz, Jared Dale, Ryan Dale, Darryl George, Gift Nagope. I mean, that's such a strong infield lineup. You've got then Robbie Glendening, Sam Kennelly, Abizil Ramirez, who I thought was unreal this week for Tampa Bay prospect as well. Jess Williams as well. Then, even in the outfield, they've got Blake Galian, a great piece actually on the Melbourne Aces, a sit down with Blake Galian as well. Connor Willis, there's another American Association tie-in for you, DV.
Yep,
and
great kid.
And then you've got for the Heat, you've got Bajarski, who hit the stuffing out of the ball last week. So did Robbie Glendening. You got Tim Kennelly out there as well. Grant Witherspoon, who looks really good as well, and Shane Sasaki, who looks great as well as a Tampa Bay Rays prospect. I mean, this is a really good series. For anyone watching it tonight, Dylan Unsworth, Unsworth looked incredible. He looked like he did not miss a beat last week. He was absolutely lights out from the second he stood on the mound. And then there's guys like another American Association type, Nate Gherkin. He looked really strong as well. And there were guys that were just such, Alan Strong, another one who looked incredible for the Heat last week. Then even like Will Sheriff, and you got add Bo Souza, add Zach Reininger
from San Antonio.
Reininger, exactly. Yeah. Add him in. We know we haven't got Warwick Sawpolt just yet back for the Heat, but boy, they got some really, really, really. That was the one thing that I thought was incredible for the Heat. They've got some really good arms this week. They only had one sort of in that 18 innings of baseball that they played last week. They had kind of one wheels off inning in the whole time. But outside of that, the arms are good. Adbrack and Tom Bailey as well to do a little bit of work out of the pen. I mean, I like what they've got from an arms perspective, but I love what Melbourne have got as well from a hitting perspective. And it's a juicy one, DV. And this is the sad part. This is such a good series, and it's just there's just so much negative. But if you love your baseball, this is a series not to miss, man. This is the way to ring in the new year, DV.
I'm going to give you a little something here. So let me play this for you here.
Oh, the old did you know?
It's coming to you. It's something good here for you. Get him a dance here.
That band.
Yes, there we go. Did you know we were talking about big sluggers? All right, big sluggers, difference makers. And from the American Association, here's a guy to watch. And I told you this, not you, but the fans this when he signed. Derek Tomshay is with the Victorians, with the Melbourne Aces. I believe, let me check his box score from the weekend. I had it right here a moment ago. What did he go? He was 1 for 4, had a home run in the actually, I'm sorry, he had Yeah, he had a homer. Yeah, he did. He had a home run and 2 RBIs last weekend. Did you know he is a young man from Sioux City, Iowa, but even more so, he went to Auburn University there in Auburn, Alabama in the Southeastern Conference. Partner, I'm going to ask you, I don't expect you to know this. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to connect the dots to the Hall of Fame here. Now, he's not a Hall of Famer yet. He may be an ABL Hall of Famer before it's all said and done. But did you know Auburn has a Hall of Famer and a very famous one? Did you know this?
No.
Well,
I'm trying to think who it could be.
Well, I'm going to give it to you because this gentleman also was a 2-sport star at Auburn. But when I tell you the Big Hurt, does that sound familiar to you?
Yes.
Frank Thomas. Frank Thomas, as a 19-year-old there at Auburn University. Thomas is, let me pull up his numbers while he was at Auburn. Frank Thomas, the Hall of Famer, actually is his big league numbers here. But first, the Hall of Famer Frank Thomas got his start at Auburn University back in the day, back many, many moons ago. He's from Columbus, Georgia, which is actually Columbus, Georgia, on the Chattahoochee River, separates Columbus, Georgia, from the plains of Alabama. It's about 30 miles away. He grew up right across the river in Columbus, Georgia, went to Auburn, was a collegiate star, and eventually became the White Sox first-round pick in 1989 out of Auburn University. The Big Hurt, of course, going on to big things in the big leagues and, of course, the Hall of Fame. But Tom Shea played at Auburn as well. Now, of course, not the same time. There's your Hall of Fame connection. And a little did you know, for you here on Talking Baseball, Australia Live, Baseball's Best Mate, did I deliver or not?
Yeah, you did. But off the top, is the Big Hurt the best nickname almost ever? I mean, if you're going to be known as something, do you want to be like? I mean, the kid was pretty cool. Like, I mean, the Big Hurt is a pretty cool nickname to have.
I can think maybe the Great Bambino. But I think you're right there. Bambino and the Big Hurt would be the two I would think. I would think were the biggest two. I would think. I mean, I would think that's what I would think. But I think that's a very good. That's really good. I love these kind of questions because I love things like best uniforms, like best cap, best old school, whatever. That's a really good one. What do you guys think? Anybody else have to have a better nickname in the big leagues than the Big Hurt or the Great Bambino? I think those two. Pretty solid right there. But that little did you know to tie the series together. Tom Shea had a great year in the American Association last year, played at Fargo, was named Player of the Week several times. I believe it was Player of the Month of July last year, or August last year. But very he's one of those guys that when he signed, circle his name, and that's the guy to watch. You plug him in there, and Colin Willis hasn't really the Iron Man, Lockie Dale says. The Iron Man. You know what? Isn't Lockie kind of the Iron Man of those Eagles as well? Isn't that would he be kind of is Lockie the Iron Man of those Morley Eagles?
I think he's down. He's down in the 2-kid dad club now. So he's not in the not in the bigger leagues anymore. He's but anyway, no, he's got the two
Iron Man. Iron Man's good. Iron Man's good. Iron Man's really good. Iron Man's really good. I do like that. Iron Man's really good. But that's another one. It's 3 right there. Bambino, the Hurt, Big Hurt, the Iron Man. Those are all 3 solid right there. Again, you Colin Willis.
Let's
go ahead.
I was just thinking, it'd be back in the schoolyard. Who you got in the fight, the Iron Man or the Big Hurt?
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. What I think this comes down to, and I looked at the numbers from last year, and let me pull those up. I had the game notes on that. By the way, I do have game notes done for us, folks. So I'm going to put them up on Facebook here a bit later, but there's not a lot. I'm going to apologize in advance. There's not a lot to put in there because we haven't played anything yet. We're still, there's no one, no one's played. There's all last year's numbers, a few tidbits in there. We'll put this up on Facebook for the game, but we do have game notes, which will have those an abbreviated season here and there. They won't be as in depth because we don't really have many games to play this year. But one of the things I did come up with, and just looking at them, I think one thing, and this article was on the Heat's website, I like the Heat's pitching versus the Melbourne offense. I mean, the offense coming. I mean, granted, the Heat offense is going to be just fine, but you look at that lineup: Delman Young in the middle, Tom Shea right there with him. Colin Willis is batting toward the bottom. You got Daryl George had a pretty good start as well. They have a real nice lineup card. It just stretches that lineup card. You got a guy like Willis down toward the bottom of the card who might lead off anywhere else, maybe bat second anywhere else. That kind of lineup card is lethal. But like we always say, good pitching beats good hitting with Unsworth, and then the bullpen of the Heat may be the key in this thing. I think the rotation is probably maybe a push after Unsworth, but I think the bullpen for the Heat is going to be solid. When you get add Reiniger as well in the mix, former big leaguer with the Tigers, friend of Warwick Saupold as well, I think that's where this series could swing, because really opening night, ace versus ace, you assume. And everything else after that, the bullpens can really, especially early in the season, I think that's where this thing really turns, at least on paper.
I agree, and I think that's I just don't know enough about there just hasn't been enough of the of evidence, I guess, around I've tuned into the Melbourne games against Canberra and whatnot. I just don't know enough. I haven't got enough sort of and you're spot on, DV. There's not enough data and not enough evidence, I guess, to kind of to break it down to make an argument. But look, I think the Heat's. I was so impressed by the Heat's pitching. I think they've done a great job putting that staff together. I think they've got a couple of young local guys as well who can really help in that pen as well as the veterans like Dan Schmidt trying to get a big out late in the game as well. And I just like where they're at from a pitching point of view. I think they're hitting it, as you said, Dan. Neither one of these teams, I don't think either one are going to struggle to score runs this year. So it's just going to be a case of whose team can do it a little bit better. And then the Aces this year, new pitching coach Peter Moylan as well brings a wealth of experience to those arms as well, and big situations as well. Alan D. San Miguel, a huge wealth of knowledge as well, and knows a lot of these veteran Heat players, the Tim Kennellys, the Dan Schmitz, spend a long time around these guys as well. Got a lot of insights and intel. So, it just shapes as such an interesting series. And I actually, there are series that you kind of go into thinking, what's going to happen. This is one that I like. I think you could make a case for either one easily, and I don't think you would be, whatever happens, you'd be taking your best educated guess. It'd be bold to say someone's going to sweep. The fence sitter would say it'll be a series split, but predicting what could happen is a challenge.
Well, let me give you this, because I think you're right on where I'm thinking. All time, the Heat against Melbourne, 59-26 in this current format. Last season, the two clubs split the season series at 4 games each. Here's what I think is very interesting about these two teams. Over the last 3 years, they've been about as evenly matched as possible. I mean, really, early on, they were pretty evenly matched first year or two in this thing, and then the Heat had the upper hand. Then they've been pretty evenly matched the last couple of years. Here's what's interesting for you. The last 5 series between these two clubs, they've all been splits. No team has won a series in 5 tries. Last year, 2-2 each. I mean, Heat won 2 in Melbourne. Melbourne won 2 in Perth. That, to me, I think this is an evenly matched series. It wouldn't shock me if this thing goes for a 6th consecutive split. It wouldn't shock me. I could easily see the Heat winning, 1 and 3. And, of course, it's a 4-game series, no doubleheader. That also, I think, makes it even a better chance this thing splits. I shouldn't say better chance. It's a better chance it splits if it's a doubleheader. I think in a 4-game, 4 days, it does give the Aces a little bit of an advantage, take 3 or 4. But I still think it's a 2-2 thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Because I think the biggest part is, you talked about it before with the stretch of the Aces lineup card as well. I mean, you got a lot of quality outs to get. Then you go based on Perth and like their lineup's probably going to be TK, Witherspoon, Glendenning, Proctor, Bajarski, Ramirez, Hall, Sam Kennelly, Shane Sasaki was how they lined up last week. Now there's not an easy out there either. So I mean, and at some point you're going to have the explosion of like where does it all to be? I actually might change. I might not go a split. I actually think I know the Heat a bit better. I think they're going to win the series 3-1, but that's my tip, because I just think that I like where, the Witherspoon, who's probably there's not enough data from an Aces point of view to probably know how to pitch him just yet. I really like Ramirez and Ford Proctor as well, but Witherspoon's a guy I think that he's a real highlight as well. And then Shane Sasaki as well, got a lot of speed. They got a lot of speed on the base path as well, the Heat as well. But I like the look of them last week. But we've banged on about how good Melbourne are. So
yeah, well, they're loaded. I think it'd be a great.
Can't predict baseball.
No, but this is what's good about this weekend. If there ever was a weekend that this league needed just a real awesome series, this is the one. And you mentioned Witherspoon. I think he's a pick to click as well. But this league needs 4 outstanding games. I don't care if they're pitching duels, offensive juggernauts, what. They need 4 really competitive games. And then we reshuffle the deck come Sunday, Monday, and what happens from them. But, do we want to make a call on this thing? Matt even tipped a moment ago a split. You think 3-1. I love the Aces. I do. I really do. I think these two teams will probably be. You know what, though? How many times I said this? Any team out there, because it's such a small competition this year. I will say this, though. I think the Rays contingent is a lot better than folks realize. And I think besides the deep bullpen, because when you've got what Andy Kyle can do later in the game, let's say 6, 7, 8, he can match up these sluggers with good arms, and they keep coming at you. Different types, different arm angles, lefty, righties, all that. But I think the unsung thing, we haven't talked anything about these imports. You've mentioned a little bit what you saw, but I just feel if you read the prospects overall, outside the Adelaide Phillies prospects, these Rays prospects, they're pretty good. They're pretty daggone good.
The other thing that was really interesting for me last week, DV, was chatting to a couple of people around, because Robbie Glendening had a really good series last week, like really good series. He hit a great home run. Like his defense was excellent, and I think what sort of happened, just reading between the lines as well, with Robbie is in the time that he hasn't had baseball available to him. I think while he's just gone, while he's been, in college and then with Pittsburgh and come home and play with Perth and whatnot, I think he has absolutely missed the game dearly, like a lot of guys would have.
Sure.
But it's sort of, I guess it's just changed his perspective a little bit, because he looked incredible last week as well. And there was a lot of, he can't, the stats don't lie. There was a lot of error. Last year, the thing that killed the Heat a lot was the errors at third base and short and second to an extent. There was so many errors that led to runs last year. But, I mean, he looked defensively so sharp, offensively looked so sharp. So you've got this year into the lineup, you've got a better Bajowski as well. And he looks strong and fit as ever. I think you have better Rays prospects than you've had, and you've got a better Robbie Glendening than you had. So it's hard to kind of go, well, where are these guys? Where are they going? And then their arms, I think, they're better than they've been. Add Warwick Sawbolt at some point into their rotation. It's hard to kind of go, where are these guys going wrong on paper? Like, it's hard to sort of make an argument to say, well, I don't think these guys are going to go as well as what we think, because it's they're a very well put together team at the moment. And that's not because I broadcast the Heat. It's just the fact that their prospects, as you said, DV, their prospects are really good.
Yeah, and one thing of note, too, last year, these two clubs led the league in errors. They were combined tied to the top, 56 apiece for the season. They both had to shore up their defense. And I think you bring up a good point. This is going to be across the board for a lot of guys. Zach Reiniger is one of those cases as well. The last time he pitched competitively was in 2019 at AAA. And then he was signed, traded, then a minor league contract with the Athletics. Didn't get a chance to, even do anything with them because their season was shut down at AAA. You got a lot of guys in the same boat. Robbie Glendening, who may have been a little tired coming in the year last year after the season in the States, where he was real busy getting to AA and from higher to AA. You got a lot of guys. Ulrich Bajowski. I mean, I could go down the roster of both these clubs that haven't played in a while. They're going to be really hungry. And then you got some guys. Look, for example, I'll use Tom Shea, for example, a guy who probably should be an affiliated baseball, who's going to try to carry that momentum through the winter ball and hopefully get signed off this winter ball season. So there's a lot of energy from different levels. You get guys who've been idle. You get guys who've been going. I creates a dynamic we haven't seen ever. We've never had this dynamic unless a guy's on injury. Now, coming off injury, say an elbow reconstructive, whatever, or knee, that's what we have. But wholesale, we don't have a lot of guys are coming in this thing hot after a season, the minors or whatever. And that's what I think makes this thing, there's some hungry guys out there on both sides.
100%. And you're spot on, like, you gift Nagopes, et cetera, like that. I mean, these guys are out to impress big time because there's so much. Because, I mean, how many big league clubs or affiliate, how many clubs out there do you think are sitting back totally reassessing how they go about their business in 2021? I mean,
no doubt.
From rosters, whatnot. I mean, all of a sudden they're looking to maybe, like all of a sudden they catch news because there's not a lot of sport going on around the world, but maybe some people are watching baseball a bit more than they normally would, and all of a sudden they see this gift Nagope seems to be all right down there or whatever, and the Rays clearly with trading Snell and whatnot, they're going in a youth direction, so maybe they're looking at these guys down here with a lot more vigor than they normally would, DV. But
yeah, they've got 5 bona fide starters in the Heat. They've got a deep bullpen, and the one thing to remember is the young guys, Alex Hall, Jess Williams, and Ulrich Bajowski, especially Hall and Bojo. They look like they bulked up a bit. I like that. And as far as the aces go,
and I think that sorry, cut in, DV, but the only thing I'll add with guys like, and this is the same for Melbourne as well, like Bajowski, Hall, and Glenn, these guys as well, who they've had extended time at home as well, which hasn't happened for a couple of years either. So time with the family, time with the girlfriend, time to fish, time to kind of do weights, time to reconnect with whatever they want to do without sort of just leaving the heat season, going on a plane. So there are you're spot on. Like all of a sudden they're just more mature players, and that's what's great.
I correct myself too. I told you Colin Willis is at the bottom of the card. He's actually batting, at least he last weekend, 3, 4, 5. He was 6. So I stand corrected. It was my bad. I didn't read my own notes properly there on Willis with Victoria. But yeah, I think a lot of folks are coming across saying 3-1. Phil says the quality of U.S. players provided this season across all clubs. Yes, that's a very good point. I want to make 2 points here. The first one is, before I get to that, Phil, you use Nagope, for example, or Reiniger as for Heat. Remember, Major League Baseball has trimmed down the fat on the minor leagues. There's fewer jobs now, and so these AAA jobs are fewer. There's still the same amount of AAA jobs, same amount of AA jobs, but used to be you'd put some prospects down the A ball who won't be in A ball. They'll be in AA. And there'll be fewer AA and AAA options. You may put a prospect in AAA as opposed to used to be AAA was your spot for all your veterans, and that's how it usually is supposed to be. But you're going to see more prospects in AA jump to AAA to create roster spots down the chain because you got fewer rookie spots, fewer A-ball spots, all that. So you're going to see that. So these jobs, especially after not playing the minor leagues last year, these jobs are huge. And so a lot of guys have a lot on the line, both Australian and import-wise. Phil says the quality of U.S. players, again, you and I said this. Let's take ourselves back to 2012. Think of the Heat imports at that time, 2012. Carter Bell comes to mind, a fine young man out of Oregon. He got at the high A with the Rays, I believe. I'm sorry, with the Diamondbacks. Who else? We had you had Anthony Claggett was coming off being in AAA, AA, but in the big leagues of the Yankees. I'm trying to think who else is that 2012 club. Orioles players. Michael Ullman was the one guy who made made the big leagues. So Ullman was your star, and he was, but think since that time, the quality has gone up and up and up. I mean, nothing against those guys.
Well,
Ullman's star, but how much better has they gotten, mate?
Well, I mean, think of the Cavs. I mean, they had Kevin Kiermaier and they had Didi Gregorius and these guys to start with. Ronald Acuna Jr., of course, has done a lap of the map as well for a minute. And But yeah, I think what's happened is typically, DV, you had one or two stars, and now you've got depth. Look, I still think the best player we've seen play in this league is probably, well, maybe we saw it too much. I thought Brosseau was the best player we've seen in this league, and maybe Fraley as well. But yeah, there seems to be a lot more of these guys coming through, DV, which is great.
Yeah, sources tell us that who was it that somebody took Reiniger off the wall, a mid '90s four seamer it says, but I don't know who that was exactly where we were at. But yeah, I think it's just, again, you're right, Phil. Though you've seen it. Phil calls the games for the Giants, and he would definitely know. I mean, the talent. It used to be, and I think what we're seeing too. You're seeing two kinds of guys come over. Your prospects, which the Phillies are sitting over and the Rays are sitting over. Then your AAA fringe big league guys, or guys who were in the big leagues coming back down again, who are still there, have a shot.
Yep.
And Unsworth comes to mind. He fits
Yep.
that kind of borderline guy. It used to be you'd get one of those guys a team, maybe. Now you're getting two and three of those guys a team. I don't recall any former big leaguers ever Claggett my first year over there. And there probably was more than that. I mean, the guys, I'm thinking back, there weren't that many. Well, sorry. Luke Hughes and Claggett were the two. And Luke was the one guy.
Vasquez.
Yeah, Virgil. Okay, Virgil. There goes three. And they were all on the same team that one year. But I'm just trying to think back. That's what made the draw of guys like Luke, because Luke would have been there. But now you're seeing more and more big leaguers. It's crazy. It's great.
And our sources also said the best pitcher ever in the ABL, hands down, Mike Ekstrom, who pitched just very, very not for a long period of time, but he was hands down the best pitcher that the ABL's ever seen.
Let me pull that up for you. Let me pull that up real quickly on the Major League site.
I think he gave up. From memory, it was. He gave up one run. I remember that in his career outing, but he was unreal.
Yeah, he was dadgum close to unhittable. Let me just pull up that year. That was 2000. What year was that? 13, 14? What were you at?
12, 13. I won't get it. 13, 14.
Right, okay. Here was his numbers in 2013, 14. Oops, sorry about that. I dropped it there. Here we go. I'm sorry. This has been 12, 13. I'm trying to look at okay. This is he was 5-1. A 0.72 ERA in 7 starts, 1 complete ball game, 1 shutout, 50 1/3 innings of work, 31 hits, 4 earned runs, just 10 walks, and 57 strikeouts. What do we learn from that? Throwing strikes and not walking folks usually leads to pretty good things there. A 0.72 and 4 earned runs that season. That's Mike Ekstrom, who was a big part of that 13-14 club. But yeah, I mean, he left I want to say around the first year, maybe
mid-season. I think it was a mid-season exit. But boy, he was really good. It was look, I think there was that was sort of the time you weren't really getting those. But he was unreal. He was absolutely unreal. So.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Let's see.
That's right. And Stuart Cable is come through the goods as well. That's right, because he went on to play in the Asia series, of course, the one that the Canberra Cavalry won. Still the reigning champions of Asia.
Yes, that's right. They put. Yeah, I'd forgotten all about that. That was a big. I missed the Asia series. I mean, that's probably down the list of priorities right now. But dang it, I missed that series. That was a lot of fun. And I love that tournament style, which leads me back to my final thing. If this whole thing doesn't pan out in the hub model for a 20-game season, could you live with a tournament style 10-day, 8-day WBC pool play, single elimination type deal? Could you live with that as a Claxton Shield for the year?
Look, I think that's how. I just have a feeling that's how it's going to be anyway. I'm fine with it. I think if we can see, I think if we can see baseball, we can see some guys running around. Like all sports, like probably the NFL really is the only sport that hasn't really changed the way it normally goes about its business. And But I think I don't think it changes anything on who could win the Shield and whatnot. But it's look, I think that's the most likely outcome. I don't know, but I think that you'll end up having that 2 week probably sprint tournament, mid Jan to the end of Jan. But look, it could be a lot of fun if they play games every day. We could have a bunch of games on KO, Fox Sports, or call it or the American Association TV. It could be a lot of fun. It could kind of really be something different. And again, this is the year that we've said, DV, got to do things differently. But look, I think that's really the only way you get through this thing. I think it's you just the problem is you just constantly, with such a gap between series. I mean, if you just constantly, there's so much can change. I mean, just got a notification on the phone. There was a couple of additional unknown cases in Melbourne for COVID, which means the WA border comes in question. I think the decision probably should be made that it's a hub, and away we go for 2 weeks, and which obviously it'll affect some people who work for a living, but.
What and let me just toss this out there as we wrap things up. Why has the NFL, the Premier League, been so successful this year with this? Well, it's pretty simple. TV. They have great TV deals. They don't really. Yes, they want fans. And here in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, the Cowboys lead the league in attendance at like 30%. But they're getting 35,000 and 100,000 seat stadium. But the NFL, the way their TV contracts set up. Yeah, you want fans and you sell more beer, more merch. Yes, you do, but you're not taking the big of it. You're taking a hit no matter what. And if you don't open your gates, you take a hit. But it's more manageable when you got TV deal, which every weekend, it's a made-for-TV game, and it's a big the way the whole thing. In college football to a certain degree as well. The Premier League, same thing. Great worldwide. You got eyes watching worldwide, and that is the big difference in the two. So, we hope to get this weekend. We have no idea what next week's show will be like. We may have a 5 minute into it and just tossing the whole thing again. Who knows? But let's see. Stuart says, should tomorrow be rescheduled a doubleheader in Melbourne to get flooded? You know what? That could have happened. I mean, don't you think it's a good idea? That's a good idea.
Yeah, 100% it's a good idea. And I think that's, because typically if the Premier of Western Australia goes out today and says that the border's closed for Victorians or 14-day quarantine again, generally they give you that little window to get back home. But look, and I think, and that's the one thing, and that's the sad part. We've talked about the politics of all this before, but I mean, over here, there's an election in March for the Premier, and you've kind of got this far. I suppose you got into January where life's pretty normal over here, and I think he will very much go on the side of caution when it comes to what we do border wise. So I mean, I think Stuart's idea is great because if you were a betting man, you'd probably put money on the fact that border is going to get probably closed at some point, just because that's just the trend, and why so close to election would he change that? And rightfully, wrongfully, I'd rather keep us open, but that's just my opinion. But a lot of folks don't want it open. So
if for some reason the Heat didn't get back before it closed, well, then you can't have it. You'd have a team that basically would be done for 14 days, and they can't travel. City can't travel. You're down to 4 teams. That's almost not doable. And so it's very imperative. It's very imperative they have to. Sorry about that.
You're at that point. I was just going to say, DV, you're at that point now in the season where 14-day quarantines just aren't viable. I mean, you're at the point where you've only got a month. You've only got 5 weeks. You've got 6 weeks maximum left of baseball before people need to get back to the States to do another quarantine and whatnot. But so that's it. I mean, and what happens from there? Maybe the Heat stay over there, and guys who are working here, local guys, maybe they come home, and the rest of the guys spend the time on the road. I mean, that's maybe what happens, but that's probably more likely than less, I guess. I don't know. I'm not sure though.
Yeah. Craziness. All right, crystal ball for the new year, the weekend. You've already said 3-1 Heat, right?
I think 3-1 Heat. Yeah, I think 3-1 Heat. But it could be Aces 4-0 as well at the same time. But I just know more about the Heat, so I'm just gonna say that Yeah, Stuart makes a good point. The
I
Heat could leave their uniforms there, which
yeah,
which was a whole fiasco with Canberra a couple of weeks
Stuart,
ago.
very
But
good, very good,
uh,
very good. Touche, mate. That's very yes. That's so
Stuart
inside.
might
That's
get a
such
he
inside
might get a he
stuff.
might get a run as one of the Heat first basemen or something. You never know. But when they look for players on the East Coast, but
Yeah, I'm gonna say 2-2. I think this goes to a 6th consecutive split. But I expect good baseball at least for a couple of days until good grief until whatever the next shoe to drop. But that's just what I'm thinking. But again, that's where I'm going with it. This thing. So that's what I got, mate.
well,
You know,
mate, I think it'd be
I
great. I think regardless, it'd be a great series. So whoever
yeah,
it'd just be.
yeah,
I
I'm
think
with you.
it's for the first time. I think for the first real time this season, as ABL enthusiasts, you can actually sit back and go, this is going to be a really, really great series, and that's the best part. So
Phil says after Melbourne, Perth right now are Canberra, so no issues playing as long as they don't go. Yeah, well, see, there you go. And that may be the thing. That's the one thing that happened in the American Association. Here I go again. Winnipeg had the same issue. Winnipeg,
yeah,
Canada, you couldn't cross over back and forth because those borders were shut, and I think they still are. The border between
sure, yeah,
Canada and the United States, except for special transit supplies, baseball teams couldn't cross over last summer. And Winnipeg was forced to come over, get over on their own accord, and then stay. They couldn't even go home. They had to play all their games in Fargo, and they basically just packed up the entire group before the border closed. Knowing the border was going to close, they crossed over, shut behind them. As they crossed in the States, shut right behind them, and they stayed in the States and played their entire schedule on the
yeah.
road. And that's been done before. I can see that very easily
Oh,
happening. I can really.
the Toronto Raptors in basketball, they're playing. They're out of Tampa Bay at the moment. They're playing at the Tampa Bay Lightning Arena, and they're playing down there. The
Yes.
NHL, the ice hockey have got a new division, which is all the Canadian teams because obviously they can't travel between Canada and the US, and so it's interesting, and yeah, and I think the Heat can obviously get, as Phil said, they can get through those games of quarantine. It's just that you know that's all well and good, but then the sort of, I guess, if you're the one that's paying the bills, you don't make that much money on road games. You make your money on your home games, so you want your home series to happen as well. So it's
Well, and see
anyhow.
that's one more thing to throw out there. Now I'm kind of dragging this thing out here, but here's the problem with doing the hub thing initially, because it takes out the home revenue for these clubs, and there's no revenue sharing. They have to come up with a revenue sharing plan. And if I'm Brisbane and I got to play all my games in Adelaide, I'm not going to get any game ticket sales, beverage sales. How does Adelaide split that check up with me, and how's that work? Because that's something these teams they're not in business to do business like this. That these are not designed to do it like that. Now, in a pandemic, yes, but no one's ever been down this road before. We've never done it like this. And that has been one of the biggest issues. And again, with the TV deal, these big leagues can do it, but you can't do that. And that's one of the things, if they would have tried to hub, let's say back in October, and said, we're going to do a hub, that's all we're going to do, and we're going to just be safe. How do you tell Brisbane or Perth, whoever, well, you just can't make money this year? You got to pay your players, you got to pay your vendors, you got to pay your salaries, but that's one thing that's why they tried so hard to give us so much opportunity to either get 2 games in, one, whatever it is, to get something in the coffers. It all comes back to dollars and cents again, because these folks are trying to save their ass. And I don't blame them. My thoughts and prayers, I'm pulling for them all. So that's where it comes from. Partner, I think we did it again, mate. Happy New Year to you. Do you have any?
2020. Do you expect to have another year like it, DV?
Gosh, of course, this time last year, I was making my plans to come over to Australia to spend the last month or so there. Boy, I hope the tail end of this year is better than the tail end of this year. How about that? Let's hope it starts kind of bad and ends kind of good. How about that? That's my thought prayer for all you guys. But yeah, we got it going. Have those game notes up for you. Game notes up for you guys on the Facebook page as well. That's all I got, man. And the last call and questions, comments. Okay. We got through it, and we're going to fight through this. In case you missed the headlines to start off, the league expects to make a revised schedule announcement. What we do understand, if you don't hear it, and I haven't heard anything. Have you seen anything, partner? You don't hear it the next couple of hours.
No.
You won't hear it Monday. And they may just let this thing play out. The Victoria situation is also bubbling, and looking for a Sydney-Canberra 8-game mini series, or not mini series, 8-game mini season with those two teams and eventual hubs, and with the Heat playing a couple of series back-to-back at home to close out the year, and the hub in Adelaide and all that. So you're going to look at, but what we do believe is going to happen, there'll be a revised announcement probably Monday, if it's not today, Monday, the revised announcement comes out, and we'll see. And what Paul and I believe will happen will be a hybrid of hubs and teams playing. Worse, the Perth hub would close out the year, which is what we kind of thought would happen in the first place. So, so what we got for you right there, mate, huh?
That's it. That's it. Another year in the books on baseball's best mate.
You bet, mate. I will let you go, and I will close this thing out. How about it?
Happy New Year, DV. Happy New Year to all. Look forward to bringing you back in 2021. 2020 fun, they're calling it. So
2021 fun. Thanks, mate. Much love to you. There he goes. Paul Morgan there in the West. He says goodbye to you. Again, let me bring this down, too, because I want to pull that back down there. Happy New Year to you all as well. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your evening, a great New Year's festivity, wherever you are. I hope your team wins. I hope this, the most important thing, I hope baseball wins. Yesterday, baseball won with the American Association and the Australian Baseball League thing. 2 weeks ago, with the Futures from Brisbane playing the Heat in exhibition, baseball won. When Melbourne played against Canberra, baseball won. The Sydney-Melbourne series, baseball won. Let's just hope baseball continues to win, and we get through this 2021 for great things at 21-22 as our game takes off in Australia. Much love to you guys. Thank you, Matt, as well. Thank you to my broadcast partner, Paul Morgan, and for his kind words. He's the best mate a guy could have, and much love to him. Happy New Year to you, Stuart. Stay safe. Enjoy the ball games this weekend. Virtual hugs to everybody. Much love to everybody worldwide. Let's be better tomorrow than we were today. Let's be better fans of the ABL, not just our own team, but of our game, of each other. Let's fight on as a group of baseball family. You may be a Victorian, you may be from Western Australia, maybe from Texas, wherever you are, but you support our game and our growth in the great land of Australia. So let's keep doing that and fight on. Virtual hugs, everybody. Let's put that close up. Again, wish you guys a happy new year here on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best mate. For Paul Morgan, I'm Dan Vaughn. We'll see you next week, we believe, at our normal time on Friday as opposed to Thursday. We'll see you next week on Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best mate. Let's roll the close. Here we go.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for it's true.